Hello, everyone. I'm Ali Aslan, international TV presenter and journalist. And on behalf of the Friedrich-Naumann Foundation for Freedom, it is my great pleasure to welcome you to the very first edition of the Web Talk series titled "This Service is Currently Unavailable," which aims to examine how internet shutdowns are threatening democracies worldwide. This, unfortunately, is a very timely issue, as we can see from the current events in Myanmar, because increasingly governments around the world are restricting access to the internet, especially during elections and anti-government protests. In 2019, the NGO Access Now counted over 200 internet shutdowns in more than 30 countries, with Asia and Africa particularly affected. And today, this is why today we will focus our attention on the situation in Africa, where we've had a string of recent hotly contested and disputed elections. The Friedrich-Naumann Foundation for Freedom has put together a wonderful panel of experts who will speak in detail about the situation in Africa. We are joined by Felicia Antonio, who works with the NGO Access Now as a campaigner for the Keep It On campaign, which is a global campaign that fights against internet shutdowns. Also joining us is Benjamin Katana, who's a lawyer and advocate of the High Court in Kampala, Uganda. Delighted to welcome Maria Sarungi Tsehai, who is one of the most vocal and prominent media personalities in Tanzania. She's the founder and director, among other things, of the online platform Kwanza TV. And last but certainly not least, delighted to be joined by Anne-Catherine Riedel, who is the chairwoman of LOAD, an association with a focus on liberal internet and policy, and an expert on digital policy for the Naumann Foundation. Welcome to the four of you. Delighted to have you with us. Delighted and curious to hear from you in just a moment. Before I give the word to Felicia for some opening remarks, let me just point out that, of course, you, the viewers, are very much welcome to join this discussion, to chime in, to contribute with your questions through the Q&A function as this discussion goes on. And now, to kick it off, Felicia, you are working with the NGO Access Now, and particularly for the Keep It On campaign, which fights against internet shutdowns in Africa. For those who might not be too familiar with the situation on the continent, could you give us a short overview of what the situation is like?
Thank you very much, Ali, for having us. And thank you, the organizers, for putting this event together. As you rightly said, in 2019, we did document over 200 internet shutdowns, and 25 of these shutdowns were recorded in Africa, as compared to 17 incidents recorded in 2018, the previous year. We are currently finalizing our 2020 report, and we have already documented over 18 internet shutdowns on the continent. What this means is that when you look at the African continent, we do have new countries joining the shame list of governments using internet shutdowns against their people. And in 2018, there were 10 African countries that used internet shutdowns, that perpetuated internet shutdowns, while in 2019, we documented 14 countries, sorry. And over the past couple of years, countries such as Ethiopia, Algeria, Democratic Republic of Congo, Cameroon, Benin, Gabon, Tanzania, Eritrea, Liberia, Malawi, Guinea, Zimbabwe, among other countries, have been on the shame list of governments weaponizing internet shutdowns against their people. What is interesting about the shutdowns in Africa also is that they are lasting longer and they are affecting more and more people. For instance, the government of Chad between 2018 and 2019 blocked access to social media platforms for over 472 days citing national security concerns. And then also out of the 25 shutdowns recorded in Africa in 2019, 21 of them affected either an entire country or at least a number of regions and provinces. And this trend was not different in what we are seeing in 2020. Most of the shutdowns that occur in Africa happen around elections and protests. And there are a few governments that have imposed shutdowns as a remedy to prevent cheating during examinations. The reality on the ground is that internet shutdowns affect the rights of people, and they are used by governments to quell protests or to silence dissent during elections. And generally, internet shutdowns impact people's lives negatively, and this is not different from what we are seeing on the African continent. These are some of the highlights that I will give, and we'll get into the discussion as we move on. Thank you.
Most certainly. Thank you so much, Felicia, for giving this a quick overview regarding Africa's record when it comes to internet shutdowns. And from what I'm hearing just in these initial remarks of yours is that Africa's record is not good, both in terms of quantity, many countries are imposing it, but also in terms of duration. And we will, of course, go into much more detail as this discussion will unfold. And I will be very curious to hear from you in just a moment. What are the challenges, main challenges of working for an NGO whose aim it is to raise awareness of this issue? But let me bring in Benjamin here at this particular point, because Benjamin, you're a lawyer, you are based in Kampala, Uganda, a country which held elections just recently in January, where officially at least the long-serving President Museveni beat his opponent, Bobby Wine, an election that was hotly contested, disputed, widely covered in the international press. It's my understanding that during the elections, internet shutdowns were imposed on the part of the Museveni administration. What has been the situation since, and how decisive was the shutdown in deciding the election? I believe you have to turn on your microphone, Benjamin.
Thank you very much, Ali, and my appreciation to the organizers of this event. First of all, is to give context to the actions of the government in Uganda. Just like in many countries that are laboring under dictatorship, governments are afraid of free speech. And in Uganda, there has been a lot of censorship on mainstream media, both censorship and compromise, where owners of media houses cannot afford to allow free speech and expression by both the guests and the journalists because of the business and other benefits that they obtain from government. And so in the absence of free media, the only avenue for free expression and media has been the internet through social media. So during the just concluded elections, there was an internet shutdown in Uganda. And this is not the first time. In 2016, when we were having general elections, there was also internet shutdown. So it has become a tool that the government in power uses to silence dissenting voices. And because during elections in Uganda, there's a lot of brutality meted out by security agencies. And with the strict censorship of the media, the only channel through which this brutality has been widely exposed by vigilant citizens has been through social media. During the election time, there was a lot of rigging, and of course, I think the government felt it was important that they keep this under concealment, and having ensured that the mainstream media is under strict censorship, the only other way this information could be kept under the wraps was through switching off of the internet. And of course, the main challenger of President Museveni, Bobby Wine, had through his networks of friends developed an app for monitoring and tallying of results called U-Vote. And this U-Vote largely depended on internet. There was also a plan by the opposition party to make sure that their agents across the country, as soon as tallying at the polling station is conducted, they take pictures of declaration forms before they are tallied and tampered with and send them to the party's tally center. So with the switching off of the internet, all these efforts were frustrated. There was a total blackout on the coverage of what was transpiring at the various polling stations in the country. And information emerging after the voting indicates there was massive defranchisement at various polling stations, but no media house would focus on that because they feared the repercussions from the establishment. Now, with social media switched off, with internet switched off, it became increasingly easy for the regime to carry out all these excesses. The videos that have emerged when many people managed to bypass the restrictions and the partial lifting of the shutdown of internet indicate that there was massive votes rigging, there was massive brutality against the people of Uganda by members of the security forces, but all this information was kept under concealment. And so the question as to whether the shutdown was decisive in affecting the results, my answer is yes, that in very many ways, the shutdown of internet affected the entire election process in terms of transparency, in terms of free expression and sharing of information by supporters of candidates, in terms of frustrating the tallying, especially by the leading opposition candidate, and it gave the incumbent and his team a leeway to manipulate the process and set the narrative since they control the media.
Right. Benjamin, thank you so much for giving this short assessment and summary of events unfolding in Uganda. Main takeaways are that, in your opinion, the internet shutdown in Uganda during the election cycle was decisive in deciding the election process and, more importantly, the outcome. And I'm hearing that the current state of democracy and freedom of expression in your country is certainly not the best. We'll come back to you, of course, in just a moment. Let me go to Maria, because Maria is from Tanzania, another country which has held elections recently in October 2020, where the incumbent President Magufuli allegedly won 84%, won re-election with 84% of the total vote tally. That's quite impressive, of course, if those numbers can be believed. And Maria, for you particularly, this is hard hit because you are the founder and director of an online platform called Kwanza TV, which has been suspended twice by President Magufuli. What is the current state of democracy and freedom of expression in Tanzania?
Thank you very much, Ali. And I think that it's a very correct way of looking at things, in the sense that the freedom of expression has been actually in danger for quite a while, for the past, especially 5 years, but in the past 2 years, just in the run-up to election, there has been a flow of legislation that was passed by this government. One of the things that it aimed to do was to censor media. It has made it very difficult for online media to function because it has given a lot of power for the authorities to shut you down for anything. So I'll give you a very absurd but very true example of Kwanza TV, which is the fact that Kwanza TV first time got suspended because of posting a story whereby the last family name of one of the civil servants was the same as that of a bishop, and they have alleged that we caused a panic. The second one was around the corona pandemic, and this happened in June 2020. The reason they suspended us was for reposting the travel advisory of the US government, which cautioned US travelers that there is still corona in Tanzania. Now, for you to understand the context and for the audience to understand, there is a huge denial in Tanzania around corona. Only recently have they started hinting that there is. So the reasons I'm giving all this example is that there was already an existing trend towards restricting the freedom of expression. And what that has led to is to the fact that, as very well the Ugandan example goes, the only free space left was online. But for those of us who are online officially through a company as an online TV, we were also restricted by licensing. And the minute they suspend your license, it doesn't mean you cannot access it. It means that if you post, you can go to prison. So what has happened is that most of us took to the internet as individuals. It means that some of us are actually being actively sought out by the government for posting some of the content, which of course has nothing to do with nothing, but apparently it's even incitement to say that there is corona in Tanzania or to tell people to wear masks. We've seen actually civil servants lose their jobs over that. When it came to the election, it became very clear that shutting down the internet was an option. And the way they started this was something that I think Felicia can also speak about, was to, first of all, try to restrict Twitter. Twitter is one of the platforms in Tanzania which has a lot of activists on it. We also have got several, but especially one very popular account, which is anonymous, and it's a whistleblowing account called Kigogo 2014. And there was a lot of information being put out there through whistleblowers. And what has happened is that some of the accounts were targeted by what is very clearly state operators and fake accounts that claimed copyright, that we violated copyright rules, which wasn't true. But they were able to hack the algorithm of Twitter, whereby if you report an account, you get suspended. So it took us quite a while, but just before election, we managed to sort it out with Twitter. As a result, the entire internet was shut down during election. And after election, Twitter has been very difficult to access without a VPN. It's only in the recent 1 week that we are hearing that, you know, some people are saying they can access it, but some of us still cannot access it. So I think it depends on who the user is. Just to give you a quick context, the reason the internet is such a big threat to governments, a good example is Tanzania. In Tanzania, for example, according to the official authority, the Tanzania Communication Regulatory Authority, right now 28.4 million people have access to internet with a 49% penetration. And that basically would mean the adult population. If you take the same for, let's say, television, decoders, which is a good way to measure how many people are watching actual TV, it's only 2.8 million. So there is a huge difference whereby people can access information using their mobile phones. Most, if you compare the penetration, 98% is through the mobile phone. So what is happening, and we're seeing that in Africa, is that the internet has become a platform which is, one, very accessible to people. It doesn't take a lot of money. Bundles are, you know, which you can call internet bundles. You can buy a bit of MBs and you can get online. Facebook and other of the providers are for free. So it means people can go online, they can watch Facebook the minute they subscribe to for as little as a few cents or $1 or $2. And what you get is you get free access to social media. That is the threat to these regimes, including the Magufuli regime.
Thank you so much, Maria, for giving us the perspective and the view from Tanzania. And Anne-Catherine, who's a leading digital policy and civil rights expert in Germany. Let me bring you in, Anne-Catherine. We've all just heard from Felicia, from Benjamin and Maria, who have talked in detail and about various countries, about how internet shutdowns are negatively affecting the freedom of expression environment in their country, how they are manipulating election results. From a European/German perspective, after everything you've heard up until now, how do you assess the situation in Africa?
Thank you, Ali. And thank you for having me here and for all your impressions about the situations in Africa. And for me, as a German, it's always very interesting and important to hear these stories, because I think we here in Germany and in Europe, we are not addressing these problems as much as we should, or see them as a human rights issue. So you mentioned I'm doing a digital policy, and of course internet shutdowns belong in part also to digital policy, but it's mostly a human rights issue. So normally my colleague would sit here and talk about this, but she wasn't available this evening, so that's why I'm sitting here and having the pleasure to discuss with you, or mostly I'm interested in hearing your stories. And Ali, you mentioned in the beginning that we are right now having the internet shutdowns in Myanmar, and also in the German press, the people are talking about this. And just this morning, I tweeted that I think there's something wrong about the articles or radio interviews on this topic, because there's no mention of a human rights violation. So I think people here in Germany, they think, okay, they don't have internet, so but where's the problem? Sometimes we have bad connections here, but we don't know what it means when you have an internet shutdown, when you're not able not only to inform yourself or express yourself, but not able to do business or learn something or whatsoever, talk with your friends. And I think that's so important, and that's why I'm so happy to have these discussions, because we need to learn and what this means, and how we, especially as Germans, as a European, can address this topic more broadly or more intensively to our politicians. And that's what I really like to hear from you today. What can I do? What can the Friedrich-Naumann Foundation do to support you in your work? And how maybe is it more necessary for us to push our politicians more intensively to address these problems, these human rights violations in a diplomatic way. So that's what I really, really like to get to know from you. What can we, can I as a German or as a part of the Friedrich-Naumann Foundation do to stop these internet shutdowns?
A very interesting point that you're raising, Anne-Catherine. Indeed, in German/European foreign policy circles, internet shutdowns are probably not widely discussed, and if they are, then they're not necessarily categorized as human rights violations. And Felicia, I want to pass on and directly pass on Anne-Catherine's plea, offer, and question to you, because as someone who is working for an NGO whose aim it is to raise awareness for this issue, in addition to the challenges that you are facing, what can someone like Anne-Catherine, what can a foundation, an individual like Anne-Catherine, and a foundation like the Naumann Foundation do in order to support and assist your work?
Thank you very much, and good to hear Anne-Catherine's comments and willingness to understand some of the challenges that we face with regards to internet shutdown advocacy. So first of all, I would say that the resources available can never be enough to tackle the frequency of shutdowns happening and their impacts around the world. And this is so because when you look at the frequent nature and unpredictability of internet shutdowns, it becomes really difficult for organizations to respond to every shutdown. And this is noting that all the shutdowns that happen are important because they do violate human rights and they impact people's lives in diverse ways. And so it's important to raise awareness about each and every internet shutdown that happens. But due to lack of resources, it's difficult to do that. The Keep It On coalition serves the needs of millions of people impacted by internet shutdowns globally. Thus, the financial, human capacity, and technical expertise available can never be enough to respond to every internet shutdown around the globe. And so there's a need for more support in the space to, and the coalition brings together over 240 organizations currently. And these are diverse organizations working on diverse issues. And sometimes it's really challenging to provide especially financial support to organizations working to raise awareness about internet shutdowns and how it's impacting them diversely. And then also one key challenge, which is related to the context in which internet shutdowns happen, is the fact that how do we ensure the safety and security of the local partners in countries where these shutdowns are happening. And there are times that we have to push from the international level to ensure that local partners on the ground are safe and are not directly involved in the campaign against internet shutdowns. And this strategy was used in Tanzania, given the closed civic space there. And most of the shutdowns, unfortunately, do happen in such closed civic spaces. Therefore, it's really, really difficult to provide the necessary resources available at that particular time for the local partners or organizations on the ground to respond, given the difficulty in speaking up against these issues. And so sometimes we have the resources available, but then we have to strategize to ensure that it reaches the right actors at the right time to respond in the right way while ensuring their safety and they are not being identified by the government. And we do this closely with our digital security helpline. But like I said, there's the need to provide more support in this regard to ensure that people are able to access the services of the digital security helpline, which seeks to provide the relevant resources to people in this space and people that need digital security support. And then also sometimes the technical know-how is not just available, and we are trying to raise awareness, trying to equip people with the relevant resources and tools and knowledge when it comes to issues of internet shutdowns, because we rely a lot on individuals to run the internet measurement tests to identify shutdowns that are happening and to help us document them as evidence for the campaign. And then one last challenge, which we all know, is the lack of political will to end internet shutdowns. And this makes it really frustrating in advocating against them, because you just wonder why a government would want to put its people through these kinds of trauma and frustrating experiences by cutting off internet access, which has become a very important lifeline, especially during this pandemic. And then through the Access Now Grants program, we seek to mitigate some of these challenges by providing support aimed at developing infrastructure through capacity building in order to mitigate some of the challenges that I've mentioned and some of the challenges that our partners face on the ground. And at the Keep It On Coalition, we try as much as possible to employ a holistic and coordinated response that is in understanding the digital rights and political ecosystem in order to provide the relevant technical expertise for monitoring and documenting incidents of internet shutdowns, and also advocating against them in spaces where it's a bit free and free for people to actually speak out against these internet shutdowns. And one thing that we can never have enough is localizing the content that we have into diverse languages to ensure that people at the grassroots level are able to access the important resources that is being disseminated to combat internet shutdowns in different languages. And so this is something that the coalition seeks to really prioritize this year to ensure that people are able to access such important content across the globe.
Well, one thing is for certain, listening to you speak, the NGO Access Now is doing very vital, very important work. And I think it's also clear that there can never be enough help, enough assistance, enough support from within Africa, but most importantly also internationally. So Anne-Catherine is taking very diligent notes while you are speaking. Benjamin, let me get you involved here. You are a lawyer and advocate of the High Court in Kampala, Uganda. Obviously, the law here, in an ideal world, the law would apply and would restrict these internet shutdowns. How much can you actually affect as a lawyer on the ground? How much power, how much influence do you have in trying to prevent internet shutdowns from taking place, or at least taking on the governments who are imposing them?
Thank you very much. The context in which we are operating in Uganda is that many times, of course, ideally the right procedure would be to go to court and challenge such acts of government that are excessive and have no basis in the law. And very many colleagues have attempted to do that, but many times the matters are either not fixed or not heard. And so it just goes a long way to, put light on the state of independence of institutions in Uganda. That you have an incumbent who basically has control over every state institution, the courts of law, the institutions that are supposed to regulate access to internet, the media, the security forces. And so that is the kind of president that we are dealing with, that he has unaccountable and controlled powers over everything that happens in Uganda. And so basically, that's the situation that we are dealing with. And the excuse has always been national security. And for that reason, almost every aspect of law in Uganda, especially relating to human rights, has been suspended. Through the campaign period and up to now, we have people being abducted. We have people being detained without trial. We have extrajudicial killings going on. So I'm giving all these examples to emphasize that much as lawyers, we can go to court, and indeed we have attempted to go to court, we are dealing with a situation where an individual has become more powerful than the state, has become more powerful than state institutions, and as a result, it's very, very, very hard to find relief, even when the law has been violated. But maybe if I could also make a quick comment on the previous question about what the world can do. I think first and foremost is to say that from a foundation that access to internet is a human right like other human rights, is to first of all promote it globally and with much vigor, but also shine light on countries like ours, where violation of human rights, including access to internet, have become a norm and acceptable, that our government and our leaders can be made to account for their actions, including violation of human rights of that nature, like access to internet.
So you think that international pressure, if exerted, could and might have an influence for the better?
Well, previously, international pressure has had a lot of influence, but the long stay in power of the incumbent and the number of, the number of relations he has globally, he, from his speech, seems not to care about international pressure anymore. But of course, from past precedents, such speeches don't mean much. So we believe that if there's international pressure on the government of Uganda, it would desist from violation of human rights, including that of access to internet. Because if, as we speak now, there was an incident where Facebook penalized certain members of the ruling party in Uganda for violating standard operating procedures of Facebook, terms and conditions, and the accounts were blocked. In retaliation, the incumbent ordered for switching off of Facebook. So up to now, you can only access Facebook in Uganda by circumventing the restrictions. And that goes a long way to show how the nation is being run on the whims of an individual. Such an environment is very toxic. It cannot allow courts of law to operate. It cannot allow state institutions to operate independently, and there cannot be fairness and justice. And
Right.
so much as the citizens of Uganda are putting up pressure, international pressure would play a very big role, in buttressing that pressure and making the voices of these Ugandans that are being defranchised, it would enable them to have their voices heard at the continental level, at the regional level, and the global level.
Well, let me pose the same question to Maria. Maria, you've already talked about the current state's negative state of democracy and freedom of expression in Tanzania, and spoke about how internet shutdowns are negatively affecting people's lives in Tanzania. Picking up from where Benjamin left off, do you think that the international community is applying sufficient pressure, or do you think that international pressure in this particular case might even backfire? What is your assessment?
Thank you very much, Ali. I'm sorry, my internet connection is not very stable. Story of our lives currently, but to put it into a larger context, I think international pressure is very important. I think it has played a very vital role in actually making incremental changes. The biggest problem we have, and in particular, I think because we're talking to a German audience, is also about the relationship of Germany and Tanzania, which goes back all the way to colonialism, which means that there is a very deep relationship. Is that Tanzania has always been viewed as this very moderate country. People are very gentle. We had exchange of presidency, although it's within the same political party, and that people assumed we're democratic. We don't have, like Uganda, an incumbent who's been in power for 30-something years. We, in fact, have had Magufuli come in with election in 2015 and then seen him within 5 years demolish, and we are actually worse than Uganda. We started the abductions of opposition, the abductions of critiques, the jailing of critiques like Tito Magoti without following procedure way before Uganda did this. In fact, we often sometimes wonder how come Uganda's judiciary has seen and shown much more maturity in many ways than the Tanzanian one. What we have, what I think very rightfully Benjamin has referred to as being a one-man show, has happened in 5 years. Now, for me, what is always has always been very astounding has been the reaction of the international community. The international community does not seem to be able to keep up. I mean, we have been labeled as alarmist, we have been seen as exaggerating, and it is only during when the internet shutdown actually happened, something that we have been talking about for 6 months, we were raising the alarm. There's going to be an internet shutdown. Nobody believed us, very few in the international community. I would like to thank very much Access Now. They've done a great job because they helped to prepare us. But very few listened to us. Very few listened to what was happening in terms of the political landscape and the fact that the entire election was so rigged that you have got a parliament right now of the ruling party with 99% of the seats taken by the ruling party. It's absurd, it's ridiculous, yet nobody's able to do anything because the entire country is gripped in this choke of one person. So I think the appeal to the international community is just to wake up. This is something that I think I've done so much, is to tell everyone to wake up. It is not possible to see a country deteriorate so fast in 5 years and not to feel that you're part of it if you continue to engage this government with business as usual. What is needed actually, and we're talking about internet shutdown, is to see that we are all there and we are all trying as Tanzanians to make a difference. But what is happening with the international community is that they're giving aid to a government that doesn't have proper oversight. If you have a 99% ruling party parliament, there is no oversight. That's it. Nobody's going to say anything about what the where the budget is spent, how it's spent. We have seen opposition party jailed. Some of us who are critics actually have gone underground. Some have been jailed as well. We are seeing a lot of that happening in Tanzania without oversight. If you continue to bankroll a government, and if you continue to give support to a government that can use the money that it receives as it wishes and is not following the rule of law, what you're seeing is actually you're helping and solidifying it. In the case of internet, and I would like to bring this example very quickly because I think it really says a lot. What has happened is actually the businesses have been the most affected, which is often run by young people. Young people, many of them actually are Uber drivers. Many have been engaged in doing business online through Instagram accounts. They would advertise, you know, I'm selling shoes, I'm selling clothes. The internet shutdown impacted them to such an extent that most of the people that I was able to privately speak to, and they were in this business, have complained of a huge loss. It doesn't sound a lot. It may be a few $1,000s, but it's a huge loss to some of these young people. And I think that the minute we understand that what can be deemed as political is actually having a huge impact on the economy, on the livelihoods of people, that is something that has to be taken very seriously. And I would like to add another thing, the entire fact that today in Africa, you have one country that refuses to get its citizens vaccinated against corona, is denying its people the basic guidelines and services around corona, and nothing is being done, says a lot about it. And this is done in Tanzania today. So I think that what we're seeing from the international community, I'm sorry to say, is they're just not stepping up, and they need to step up.
And indeed, they're not stepping up. They need to step up, says Maria. But exactly what you just pointed out, the pandemic, of course, has everyone for a year and a half, a very single-minded focus and issue. This is not an excuse, but perhaps just a attempt of an explanation why the whole world is distracted at this particular point. And we will talk about the pandemic and particularly how it relates to internet shutdowns. I just want to remind once more all the viewers that you can submit questions in the Q&A forum. We have approximately 15-20 minutes left. As a matter of fact, one viewer has picking up on our discussion saying international pressure is important, but I also feel strengthening local efforts is crucial and is the game changer. Benjamin Katana was already kind enough to reply to it, saying that he agrees. Anne-Catherine, I saw you take diligent notes while Felicia, Benjamin, and Maria were speaking. Please go ahead to pick up and share with us what you've been taking in up until now.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for your insights and what you said. And I'd like to touch up a thought I just recently had with what Maria said. Like we need to step up our game as the international community, and I look at myself as a European, especially in this point. And what I found very interesting, or like a bit mind blown. Where should I start? Well, I really love the work from Access Now. They're doing also here in Europe a very, very good job because they're holding up human rights in the digital sphere. And we here in Germany, in Europe, are talking about basic human rights, such as freedom of speech. We always talk about this, and that we shouldn't make laws that are shrinking civil liberties or human rights, but no one cares. no one cares, because I said, we live here in freedom, everything is cool. No one cares if we're saying, well, there's the UN Special Rapporteur, the former one, David Kay, who says, well, the law you are making right now in Germany is violating human rights. No one cares, really. I made this argument several times, but everyone says, well, human rights, we are in Germany, everything's fine. And I think regarding what Maria said, that young people are relying on the internet for their business, for everything in their daily lives. And we here in Germany do this too. And we also have the problem here that politicians are not recognizing how necessary the internet is. It's not something nice to have where you chat with something. It's the main infrastructure, the basic of every part of our life right now, and especially with younger people. And you said totally correctly that the international community needs to do more, but I think they aren't able to do more, and especially on the diplomatic or in the foreign policy field, because they even don't recognize for themselves, for their own country, how important the internet infrastructure, good regulation, and so on is. And that's why they aren't doing something when it comes to human rights violations like internet shutdowns in foreign countries. And that's just my thoughts I had when you said something. And yeah, I wrote something down, and I hope we are staying in contact after this panel. But thanks for your insights, and I really hope that we can find some ways to work on this together and to support you in your work.
And I'm pretty certain that the contact will not cease, or is just limited to this particular discussion. Quite on the contrary, this is what these forums are for, in order to take the next step. Felicia, we are having a couple of questions coming in from audience members. Let me see, Sero Fungisai is saying, I'm in Zimbabwe, and my observation is that international support with a strong local base will not succeed. He's saying, let me see, it is also unfair to put all the pressure on the international community. They are reeling under serious problems and challenges of their own. We need, as Africa, to invest in solutions that respond to such challenges. Felicia, what is your remark?
Yes, I do agree that international support with a strong local base.
And I'm seeing that Maria is already quite busy answering those questions. Very grateful to her to keep the ball rolling. But Felicia, I also wanted to pose some of those questions to you, of course.
Yes, definitely. Like I said, I think it goes beyond international support to find solutions to some of these challenges that we are highlighting here. When it comes to human rights violations, I think it goes beyond international support. A government has to recognize the need to uphold the human rights of its people. And I don't think it's okay for a government to think that they need influence from an external party to ensure that they respect and uphold the fundamental rights of their own people, that is even guaranteed in their own national constitutions. And so this is actually a topic that is important for us to talk about. And there might be other issues when it comes to international countries supporting some of the dictators that we have in Africa. But I think it takes the will of the government to actually prioritize the needs of its people and resolve or solve the challenges that we are highlighting in this panel. And I think we can go on and on and on with regards to who has to do what and who needs to do what, but it still comes back to who has the will to ensure that its people are free and are protected under the very constitutions that they've put together. They are protected under the legal system in the respective countries, and to provide the resources and a better way of life for its people. I think the responsibility lies on the national governments or the internal governments rather than the international community. I think there's a need for international pressure when it comes to some of these issues. But I think, as Anne said, because of diplomacy, because of all the diplomatic precautions that you have to take, it's really difficult to penetrate and ensure that governments do the right thing, excuse me to say, but then it will take their own will to ensure that the right thing is done. And that is the only way you can let us believe that you have the people close to your heart, you have the people, and you want to ensure that each and every person enjoys the basic rights and basic necessities of life that we are all here and hoping for everyone. That is what I would say.
Yes, certainly the discussion about what the international community can or should do has touched on a nerve on the part, not just in this discussion, but on the part of our viewers, saying, Mercy Webaza from Tanzania is then saying, so would you be of the mind that the international community should stop funding countries where there is abuse of freedom, where internet shutdowns, amongst other things, and the curtailment of freedom of expression and an independent judiciary at stake? I mean, these are of course very, but if I understand you correctly, Felicia, you're saying, yes, international pressure is important, does play a role, but at the end of the day, the solution and the answer has to come from the national, from the local level. Is that my understanding?
Yes, and just to add that I don't think it's right for, let's say, international community to sanction a government because of an internet shutdown, because it's going to affect the people themselves that rely on the international community for funding, for support. But what we cannot say is that will the funding that they receive be used for the appropriate reasons for which they were requested for, as Maria did say. But then I think when it comes to sanctions, with regards to these things, it shouldn't be abrupt sanctions, because it would go a long way to affect the citizens in the long run, which is what we are all trying to prevent or avoid in this space that we are working in.
Right. And as Maria has already said, and it has come up in this discussion, of course, internet shutdowns are inexcusable under any circumstances, but particularly danger in times of a pandemic, when access to the right and correct information is needed more than ever. Being mindful of the time, because this discussion, we're already almost to the fullest hour, just gets to show how fast-paced and informative this discussion has been. So let me just do a quick final round. Benjamin, let me start with you. And we talked rightly so, of course, about all the shortcomings and the problems that Africa and various countries in Africa are facing. Let's end, if possible, on a somewhat more positive note. Where's the silver lining? I mean, you are engaged on a grassroots level as a lawyer. What gives you hope? What gives you hope that the current circumstances, the current problems will be overcome?
Well, thank you very much. What gives me hope is the resilience of the people to fight back. For example, when there has been an internet shutdown, many people in Uganda are able to access internet and particularly social media by circumventing the restrictions, VPN, and the rest. And so my hope is in that resilience. My hope is in innovation, that innovators are able to come up with solutions that will be able to circumvent the restrictions imposed by dictatorial administrations in Africa. Of course, the other hope is in the international networks. My colleagues have been talking about building local solutions in Africa. The biggest challenge is the toxic environment that even an NGO operating in Tanzania, for example, cannot participate in calling out excesses in Uganda because the two dictators in the two neighboring countries have a close cooperation. They are more or less partners in crime. So even the government on the other side will be compelled to crack down on the local NGO in Tanzania. The other day in Kenya, there was a protest by people Kenyans protesting against the fraudulent election in Uganda. And I saw the police in Kenya beating them up and dispersing the protest in a very violent manner. So we need to be mindful while we are advocating for local solutions, to be mindful of the environment in which we operate across most of the countries on the continent. But to get back to your question, my hope is in the resilience of the people. My hope is in innovation like VPNs that have helped us to access social media during this time of internet blackout in Uganda. My hope is in international linkages organized, for example, under FNF and other international linkages that can help us to build strong networks that can fight back and break the backs of these autocratic establishments across the world.
So resilience, sense of innovation, and international coalition/support is what gives Benjamin hope despite a difficult situation. Maria, what's a silver lining for you? What makes you optimistic that Africa will overcome these problems in the long run?
What really gives me a lot of hope, and I agree with Benjamin, is the people. I think that one of the things that we have seen is that this generation is a generation that is able to become more than what their parents or their grandparents have been, because they have a much broader understanding thanks to the internet. They're also connected much more. I'm seeing how much, and I love the way what Benjamin said, we had great ways of collaborating. I call it the Old Boys Club, and that's the East Africa Community and the Africa Union. They're just old men seated there and they're plotting, and I'm sure they exchange notes how to crack down on us, and they're all saying, oh, this pesky people making a lot of noise. But you know what? We have got great coalitions going on online. We did great campaigns. I love the way that the Kenyans and Ugandans supported us during the shutdown. We were able to text some of them. They're the ones who gave the updates. We did the same with Uganda. We did all the hashtags for freeing all those people who were locked up, including the opposition. So I have a lot of hope because the people of Africa are connecting today more than ever before. I would like to very much emphasize again, you need to understand as the international community that we need an equal and fair playing ground in order for us to be effective. To say that you need local initiatives when you have the entire state coming after you. And I'll give a good example of myself. I've had every form of my livelihood taken away. And right now they're looking for me actively. What do you expect me to do? I mean, I'm doing whatever I can, but I'm just saying, we are just individuals facing the state. In exchange, what you're seeing, the European Commission, for example, has given Tanzania millions of euros to combat Corona, while it's not doing anything. And the only way we learned about this is through the internet. We learned when actually the European Parliament talked about it. So the reason I'm pointing this out is that I'm sorry to say, even in Europe, it's the bureaucrats who are making decisions and they're not helping us on the ground. What they're doing is they're not creating level play fields. In Uganda, in Tanzania, people wanted to go out to protest. You had police geared to the teeth, beating people. And if you look closely, like in Uganda, they have been funded by the UK government. So we need to talk about this, and we have to stop bringing platitudes. I think sanction-wise, yes, targeted sanctions. The US has got Magnitsky Act. The European Union has passed the similar targeted sanctions. They can help. But for the people, we are ready for change. We are ready to do it even today, but we cannot go out if we know that we are facing a violent state armed to the teeth. They will cut off the internet. We can't even organize if you want to organize. That's what happened in Tanzania. The internet shutdown failed to help us mobilize for what was supposed to be a huge demonstration. And you can't even, for example, document human rights abuses. That's what we use. We use the internet for that. If we don't have a level playing field, how do you expect us to say that we should give a local answer, an African answer? We can't. We are just overwhelmed. So my appeal, please, please, please stop funding these governments. These are dictators. They meet, they talk about what to do. We are just citizens. If today, and I'm sorry to say, if you look at history, everywhere where the citizens have been able to stand up against the government, those governments did not get help from outside. They had to deal with the people themselves. If they are funded, if they're strengthened by foreign nations who are giving it to a particular regime, that's a problem. To finish up, I want to say, I really believe in the people. I know that movements are very difficult to do. That's something that I've been really engrossed in for all these years. Movements start with a few people. There are few of us, we have sacrificed a lot, we are out there, but my hope, and this is what you talked about, the silver lining, is that people are starting to understand. And suddenly, what we've been saying resonates with them. I think Africa's future is going to be the internet in many ways, but Africa's real future and real treasure is in its own people, who are beautiful, wonderful people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maria, for this very passionate plea, and echoing Benjamin's belief that it's the people of Africa who will overcome these issues and pave the way forward to a brighter, better future. Felicia, I'm going to come to you last and give you the final word. Anne-Catherine, before we wrap up, what are your, as a German European digital policy expert, what are your main takeaways from the previous 60 minutes from this discussion? I think your microphone is off.
Thank you. So I think if it's just one thing, I wrote down everything you said, that we bring resources, do capacity building, care for safety of people working in your countries, in the local areas, so that you can document everything and every internet shutdown and so on and so on. But what I think, to sum it up a bit, I think when we see one positive thing out of the pandemic is that we are now, also we here in Germany are used to these online talks on Zoom. And even though I hate it so much, and I think it's so much better to connect with people when you meet each other physically, I think the good thing is that we can have these panels, and I really hope that we will have these panels in the future, because then we have more the chance that you speak up to us Germans, Europeans, and we don't have to travel around the world, because it's much easier to attend this panel from Berlin or wherever you are and listen to what you say, because it's so important that we listen to you and hear what you say and say to us what we need to do. And I really hope that this is a part where the digitalization helps, that it connects us better, so that we can listen more to each other and act according to it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And indeed, Maria, Benjamin, Felicia, your messages were heard loud and clear, not just by Anne-Catherine, but the entire viewership, of course, and hopefully will cause some waves accordingly. Felicia, we started with you, and I would like to end with you. Your final remarks. Benjamin and Maria have already talked about what gives them hope despite the difficult situation. I want to give you the opportunity to wrap up and give us your final assessment of what lies ahead.
Yes, definitely. I agree with Maria and Benjamin that the people gives me hope, and the fact that there is an interest to end internet shutdowns, given their impact on human rights, also gives me hope. And the solidarity with which we work with, that is individuals, coalitions, organizations, with governments, also gives me hope. And this takes me back to the internet shutdown that happened in the Anglophone regions of Cameroon, which lasted 94 days. And it was a global campaign urging the government to bring back the internet. And this gained a lot of momentum on social media. It tarnished the image of the Cameroonian government, and it made the civil society organizations recognize the power we have when we are collaborating or we are coordinated in fighting the same cause. And so that keeps me going. And I believe that each and every one of us, we have the same interest, we have a common interest. And so let's remain steadfast, let's be determined, and let's work together to address and be the change that we want to see in the world that we find ourselves. It shouldn't be happening in Tanzania, and it shouldn't just be limited to Tanzanians. If something is happening in Tanzania, each and every one of us should support our brothers and sisters in that country to ensure that they get the best of life that they are asking for. It's not too much to ask. And so this is what keeps me going. And I believe that one day we would make things better, and we would see the change that we've all been fighting for all these years.
Well, and I think I speak for all who have joined the very first edition of the Web Talk series. This service is currently unavailable. That this has been an extremely informative and insightful discussion that we've had in the previous 60 minutes. Many, many thanks to Felicia Antonio, Benjamin Katana, Maria Sarungi Tsehai, and Anne-Catherine Riedel for providing their perspectives, their insights, sharing their knowledge, experiences, and their outlooks with us. This wraps up the very first edition of this Web Talk series. We're off to a very energetic, dynamic, and yes, at the end of the day, also optimistic start, because this is what I'm taking away, that it comes down to the people, and the people of Africa are going to be the source of hope and pride for better days ahead. Thank you so much for everyone joining. Thanks for all the questions to the audience members that you have submitted. I know the panelists have been very kind and diligent in answering them, and I hope you all stay safe and healthy during these times of a pandemic. And to echo what Anne-Catherine Riedel said, hopefully next time we meet again, if and when we meet again, it'll be in person, whether it's in Europe, Germany, or in Africa. So I'm Ali Hassan. Thanks so much for joining, and hope to talk to you all again before too long. All the best.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.